In the heart of Seoul, South Korea, life moved at a fast pace. The streets buzzed with people rushing to work, students heading to school, and tourists marveling at the towering skyscrapers. Technology had reached new heights, making life easier than ever before. People carried smartphones that could do almost anything. Cars drove themselves, and robots helped with daily chores. It seemed like humanity had achieved perfection, until the day everything changed. On a bright morning in early spring, Jin-ho was busy working in his lab. He was a young engineer who loved solving problems. His current project involved creating a device that could amplify energy signals. If successful, it could revolutionize how energy was used around the world. Jin-ho often stayed late into the night, tweaking circuits and running tests. But this particular morning, he felt uneasy, though he couldn't explain why. At the same time, Hai-won, a journalist known for her sharp reporting skills, was preparing to cover a story about advancements in renewable energy. She had been assigned to interview researchers at Jin-ho's facility because their work was groundbreaking. Hai-won wasn't just passionate about journalism. She believed deeply in uncovering truths that mattered. Her camera bag slung over her shoulder, she walked briskly toward a building, unaware of the events about to unfold. As the clock struck 9, something strange happened. The sky darkened suddenly, as if a storm were approaching. But there were no clouds, just an eerie silence that settled over the city. Then came a low rumble, growing louder by the second. People stopped in their tracks, looking up at the heavens. From above, massive ships descended, blocking out the sun. They were unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Sleek, metallic, and pulsating with alien lights. Panic spread quickly. Cars screeched to a halt, and crowds scattered in every direction. Inside the research facility, alarms blared and red warning lights flashed. Jin-ho froze for a moment, staring out the window as one of the ships hovered directly above the building. "What is happening?" he whispered to himself. Before he could react, the doors burst open and armed figures stormed in. They weren't human. Their bodies shimmered with scales, and their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "Stay calm," Jin-ho muttered under his breath, clutching the prototype device he had been working on. He knew it wasn't finished yet, but it might be his only chance to escape or fight back. As chaos erupted around him, he ducked behind a desk, watching as the aliens began destroying equipment and rounding up scientists. One of them noticed Jin-ho hiding and raised a weapon. Without thinking, Jin-ho pressed a button on his device. A surge of energy shot out, momentarily stunning the creature. Seizing the opportunity, Jin-ho sprinted toward the exit. Outside, the scene was even more chaotic. Buildings crumbled under the weight of the alien ship's gravity fields. Flames licked the air as explosions rocked the streets. Hai-won, still near the facility, frantically recorded everything with her camera. "This is Hai-won Kim, reporting live from Seoul," she shouted into her microphone, her voice trembling. "Alien ships have appeared in our skies, and they are attacking the city. We don't know what they want or where they came from, but we must stand together." Her words echoed across social media platforms within minutes. People everywhere watched in horror as videos of the invasion flooded the internet. Some cried, others prayed, and many simply stared in disbelief. For Hai-won, this was more than just a story. It was a call to action. She vowed to keep filming, no matter the danger. Back inside the facility, Jin-ho finally made it outside, gasping for breath. He saw Hai-won nearby, still broadcasting. "You need to come with me," he said urgently, grabbing her arm. "I have something that might help us survive." Though startled, Hai-won nodded and followed him. Together, they ran through the chaos, dodging fallen debris and avoiding the glowing eyes of the invaders. As they reached a safer part of the city, Jin-ho explained what he had been working on. "It's not ready yet," he admitted, holding up the small device, "but it can disrupt energy fields. Maybe we can use it against them." Hai-won listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to tell others," she said. "If everyone knows, we can fight back." By evening, the full scope of the invasion became clear. The aliens, calling themselves the Vortri, addressed Earth through a distorted transmission. Their leader, Zyrak, spoke with a cold, mechanical voice. Your kind is weak, he declared. You squander your resources and pollute your planet. You are unworthy of survival. We will take what is ours. His words struck fear into the hearts of billions. Many gave into despair, believing resistance was futile. But for Jinho and Haiwan, those words ignited a spark of defiance. They refused to accept defeat, not without a fight. That night, as they huddled in a makeshift shelter, Jinho tinkered with his device while Haiwan brainstormed ways to share their plan with the world. Despite the destruction surrounding them, they found solace in each other's company. They weren't alone in this fight, and they wouldn't let fear consume them. Little did they know, their actions would inspire others to rise up. What started as two individuals trying to survive would soon grow into a global movement. The day humanity turned fear into fury had begun, and it would change the course of history forever. End of Part 1 document. Days turned into weeks, and the Vorthree tightened their grip on Earth. Their ships loomed over cities like dark shadows, casting an oppressive weight on everyone below. Streets that were once alive with laughter and activity now lay deserted, littered with rubble and remnants of a life lost. The invaders had imposed strict rules, curfews, no gatherings, and complete obedience to their commands. Anyone who resisted disappeared without a trace. But humanity wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. In hidden corners of Seoul, small groups of survivors began to organize. They called themselves the Resistance. Among them was Jinho, whose unfinished device became their beacon of hope. Though it hadn't been tested fully, its potential gave people something to believe in, a chance to fight back against the seemingly unstoppable Vorthree. Jinho joined forces with Tae-suk, a former soldier whose family had vanished during the initial invasion. Tae-suk was older than Jinho, with scars etched not just on his face, but also in his heart. He carried anger like a weapon, channeling it into action. Together, they worked tirelessly to refine Jinho's prototype, testing it in secret labs set up in abandoned subway tunnels beneath the city. Haiwan, meanwhile, continued her work as a journalist, though her role had shifted dramatically. Instead of reporting for mainstream media, she used her skills to gather intelligence on the Vorthree. Armed with a camera and a notebook, she ventured into dangerous areas, documenting the aliens' movements and uncovering clues about their technology. Her bravery earned her respect among the Resistance members, who relied on her reports to plan their next moves. One evening, while sneaking to the ruins of downtown Seoul, Haiwan encountered June, a quiet young woman with sharp eyes and even sharper instincts. June was a hacker who had managed to bypass the Vorthree surveillance systems. She lived alone in a crumbling apartment building, surrounded by computers and wires. When Haiwan stumbled upon her hiding place, June initially thought she was an enemy. But after hearing Haiwan's story and seeing her determination, June decided to join the cause. With Jiun's help, the Resistance gained access to critical information about the Vorthree's operations. Through hacked transmissions, they learned that the aliens relied heavily on advanced energy grids to power their weapons and shields. These grids were vulnerable to disruption if someone could find a way to target them precisely. This revelation reignited Jinho's focus on perfecting his device. If he could amplify specific frequencies, he might be able to disable the Vorthree systems temporarily, giving humanity a fighting chance. As the Resistance grew stronger, so did their resolve. Small acts of defiance began popping up across the city. Graffiti appeared on walls, mocking the Vorthree and urging people to rise up. Underground networks distributed food and supplies to those in need. And late at night, when the streets were empty and the patrols less frequent, teams of fighters struck at Vorthree supply lines, sabotaging their equipment and stealing whatever they could use. Despite these victories, challenges remained. Supplies dwindled, forcing the group to make do with whatever scraps they could scavenge. Casualties mounted as the Vorthree retaliated brutally against anyone suspected of rebellion. Morale wavered, especially when Zyrak, the Vorthree leader, addressed Earth again through another chilling transmission. "Your attempt to resist are futile," Zyrak declared, his voice cold and mechanical. "You cannot win. Surrender now or face total annihilation." His words stung deeply, planting seeds of doubt in many hearts. Some began questioning whether resistance was worth the cost. Others argued that surrender meant certain death anyway. For Jinho and Haiwan, however, Zyrak's arrogance only fueled their determination. They refused to let fear dictate their actions. One night, the resistance gathered in their underground hideout to discuss their next move. Tae-suk stood at the front of the room, his expression grim. "We need to hit them where it hurts," he said, pointing to a map pinned to the wall. "Here, their main supply depot. It's heavily guarded, but if we can destroy it, we'll cripple their operations in this region." The plan was risky, but everyone agreed it was worth trying. Jinho volunteered to accompany the team, insisting that his device might prove useful during the mission. Haiwan, despite protests from others, insisted on coming along too. "I'm not staying behind," she said firmly. "If I can document this, it'll inspire others to join us." Preparations began immediately. Jiun hacked into the Vor3 security feeds, providing detailed layouts of the depot and identifying weak points in their defenses. Tae-suk trained the team rigorously, drilling them on stealth tactics and combat strategies. Jinho fine-tuned his device, ensuring it was ready for real-world use. And Haiwan recorded everything, capturing moments of tension and camaraderie alike. Finally, the night of the mission arrived. Under the cover of darkness, the team moved silently through the streets, avoiding Vor3 patrols. As they approached the depot, their nerves were taut, every sound amplified in the eerie stillness. Using Jun's intel, they slipped past the first layer of guards undetected. Inside, the air was thick with tension as they navigated narrow corridors lined with crates of alien weaponry. Suddenly, an alarm blared, shattering the silence. One of the guards had spotted them. Chaos erupted as Vor3 soldiers swarmed the area, firing beams of energy that crackled through the air. Tae-suk shouted orders, directing the team to split up and create diversions. Jinho clutched his device tightly, knowing this was their moment. Spotting a control panel near the center of the depot, Jinho sprinted toward it, dodging blasts as he went. With shaking hands, he activated the device, aiming it at the panel. A surge of energy shot out, causing sparks to fly and lights to flicker. The Vor3 weapons faltered momentarily, giving the team precious seconds to regroup. "Now!" Tae-suk yelled, tossing explosives toward the nearest crates. Explosions rocked the building, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Amid the chaos, Haiwan filmed furiously, capturing the scene for posterity. Flames illuminated the faces of the fighters, their expressions fierce and unyielding. When the dust settled, the team emerged victorious, but barely. Many were injured, and some wouldn't walk away unscathed. Still, they had succeeded in destroying the depot, dealing a significant blow to the Vor3's efforts in Seoul. News of their triumph spread quickly, inspiring other resistance cells around the globe to rise up simultaneously. For Jinho, Haiwan, and the rest of the team, the victory was bittersweet. They knew the war was far from over. But for the first time since the invasion, they felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity was no longer afraid. It was angry. And anger, they realized, could be a powerful force. The resistance had struck a major blow against the Vor3, but the victory came at a cost. Supplies were running dangerously low, and injuries among the fighters were mounting. Despite their success in destroying the supply depot, the group knew they couldn't keep fighting like this forever. Every mission pushed them closer to exhaustion, and a constant threat of discovery weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Jinho spent most of his time tinkering with his device, trying to improve its power and range. The prototype had proven effective during the last mission, but it was still unstable. If they wanted to stand a real chance against the Vor3, they needed something more reliable, something capable of disabling their technology on a larger scale. Sleep became a luxury Jinho could no longer afford as he worked tirelessly, fueled by coffee and sheer determination. Haiwan, meanwhile, continued her role as both a journalist and a messenger for the resistance. Her footage of the depot attack had gone viral, spreading hope and defiance across the globe. People who had once felt powerless now saw that resistance was possible and necessary. Haiwan traveled between safe houses, delivering supplies and sharing updates about the war effort. She also documented the stories of survivors, ensuring their voices would not be forgotten. One evening, while reviewing intercepted transmissions with Jiun, Tae-suk made a startling discovery. Hidden within the data was information about the Vorthri's core technology. Their weapons and shields relied on harmonic frequencies to function. If these frequencies were disrupted, even briefly, the entire system would collapse. This revelation gave the team a new sense of purpose. It wasn't just Jinho's device. It was humanity's best shot at turning the tide. We need to hit one of their frequency generators, Tae-suk announced during a meeting in their underground hideout. He pointed to a map marked with several locations. These are their main hubs. If we can disable even one, it could cripple their operations in this region. The plan was risky, but the team agreed it was worth trying. They chose a hub located near the outskirts of Seoul, where security was slightly less intense compared to other areas. Still, breaching the facility would require precision, teamwork, and a lot of luck. Preparations began immediately. Jiun hacked into the Vorthri systems again, gathering detailed blueprints of the hub and identifying potential entry points. She also set up decoy signals to distract the guard station outside. Tae-suk trained the team rigorously, focusing on stealth tactics and emergency protocols. Jinho worked around the clock to ensure his device was ready for the mission, testing it repeatedly until he was confident it wouldn't fail under pressure. On the night of the operation, the air was thick with tension. The team gathered in silence, each member lost in their own thoughts. HFY adjusted the strap of her camera bag, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had promised herself she wouldn't let fear take over, but the stakes this time were higher than ever before. As they approached the hub, the streets were eerily quiet, save for the hum of distant alien machinery. The team moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows to avoid detection. Reaching the perimeter fence, Jiun disabled the security cameras, using her laptop, creating a small window of opportunity for the others to slip through. Inside the compound, the atmosphere shifted. Corridors lined with glowing panels led deeper into the facility, where the generator room was located. The team split into two groups, one tasked with creating diversions, the other responsible for reaching the generator. Jinho, HFY, and Tae-suk formed the latter group, moving quickly and quietly toward their objective. Things went smoothly at first. The decoys worked perfectly, drawing most of the guards away from the generator room. But as they neared their destination, disaster struck. An alarm blared suddenly, piercing the silence. Somewhere along the way, they had triggered a sensor. Move faster. Tae-suk hissed, urging the others forward. Guards appeared around the corner, their weapons raised. Tae-suk fired back, providing cover as Jinho and HFY sprinted ahead. Reaching the generator room, they found it guarded by two Vorthri soldiers. Thinking quickly, Jinho activated his device, sending out a burst of amplified energy. The guard staggered, momentarily disoriented, giving Tae-suk enough time to neutralize them. Once inside, Jinho connected his device to the generator's control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he inputted commands. Outside, chaos erupted. The diversion team clashed with Vorthri reinforcements, explosions lighting up the night sky. HFY filmed frantically, capturing the intensity of the battle. Her hands shook, but she refused to stop. This was history in the making, and she wanted the world to see it. Back in the generator room, Jinho's device began emitting a low hum, growing louder with each passing second. Lights flickered, and the walls vibrated as the harmonic frequencies destabilized. "It's working," Jinho shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. But then, everything went wrong. A squad of Vorthri soldiers stormed into the room, surrounding them. Outnumbered and outgunned, the team braced themselves for the worst. Just as the soldiers prepared to fire, an explosion rocked the building, throwing everyone off balance. It was Tae-suk detonating a charge he had planted earlier to create an escape route. "Go!" he yelled, motioning for Jinho and HFY to follow him. They ran to the smoke-filled corridors, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. Behind them, the generator room collapsed in a fiery inferno, taking the frequency grid with it. By the time they reached the surface, the entire facility was in ruins. Exhausted but alive, the team regrouped at a safe distance, watching as flames consumed what remained of the hub. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves a moment of relief. The mission had been successful, but only barely. Word of their victory spread quickly, inspiring others to rise up. Across the globe, resistance cells launched coordinated attacks on Vorthree strongholds, exploiting the temporary disruption in their systems. Cities once gripped by fear now pulsed with fury, as ordinary citizens armed with makeshift weapons joined the fight. Humanity was no longer afraid. It was angry, and anger, they realized, could be a powerful force. For Jinho, Haiwan, and the rest of the team, the battle was far from over. But for the first time since the invasion, they felt a glimmer of hope. Together, they had turned fear into fury, and they weren't about to stop now. The resistance had struck a devastating blow against the Vorthree by disabling one of their frequency generators. The victory was celebrated not just in Seoul, but around the world. News of the success spread like wildfire, inspiring countless others to rise up and join the fight. People who had once hidden in fear now took to the streets with whatever weapons they could find: pipes, knives, even rocks. The tide was turning, and humanity was no longer willing to bow to its oppressors. But the Vorthree were far from defeated. Zyrak, their leader, grew angrier with each passing day. He had underestimated humanity's resilience, and it infuriated him. In response, he ordered brutal crackdowns on resistance strongholds, deploying more soldiers and increasing patrols. Cities already scarred by war became battlegrounds, as both sides fought fiercely for control. Jinho, Haiwan, Taesuk, Jun, and the rest of the team knew they couldn't afford a rest. Their recent victories had given them hope, but they also knew the cost of failure would be catastrophic. If they wanted to win this war, they needed to aim higher, to strike at the heart of the Vorthree's power, and that meant targeting their mothership. The alien fleet loomed above Earth like a dark storm cloud, its massive ships casting long shadows over the planet. At the center of it all was the mothership, a colossal vessel brimming with advanced technology and serving as a command center for the entire invasion. Destroying it wouldn't just cripple the Vorthree. It would send a message loud and clear. Humanity was done being afraid. Taesuk proposed a plan during a tense meeting in their underground hideout. "We hit the mothership," he said firmly, pointing to a crude sketch pinned to the wall. "It's risky, but if we succeed, we can disrupt their entire operation." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the enormity of the task. Breaking into the mothership sounded impossible, but then again, so had every other mission they'd undertaken. Jinho spoke up first. "My device can amplify energy signals enough to overload their systems," he explained, holding up the prototype. "If I can get close to their core reactor, I might be able to destabilize it." Haiwan nodded, her expression resolute. "I'll document everything," she said. "If we pull this off, the whole world needs to see it." June chimed in next. "I can hack into their internal systems to guide you through the ship," she offered. "But you'll need to move fast. They'll notice something's wrong almost immediately." With the plan set, preparations began. June worked tirelessly to map out the layout of the mothership using intercepted transmissions. She identified weak points in its defenses and plotted a route that would allow the team to infiltrate undetected. Meanwhile, Jinho fine-tuned his device, ensuring it could handle the immense energy required to overload the reactor. Sleep became optional as everyone focused on making the mission a success. Finally, the night of the operation arrived. The team gathered in silence, their faces grim but determined. They wore stolen Vorthree uniforms as disguises, hoping to blend in among the enemy ranks. Each member carried only what was necessary: weapons, tools, and Jinho's device. As they stepped outside, the air felt heavy with anticipation. This was it, their last stand. Reaching the mothership required sneaking past layers of security, including patrol drones and armed guards. June guided them remotely, her voice crackling through their earpieces as she directed them toward hidden access points. At one point, they narrowly avoided detection when a patrol passed dangerously close. Holding their breath, they pressed themselves against the cold metal walls until the danger passed. Once inside, the team split into two groups. Taesuk led the distraction team, creating chaos in the lower levels to draw attention away from Jinho and Haiwan. Armed with explosives, they sabotaged key areas, forcing the Vorthree to divert resources to contain the damage. Meanwhile, Jinho and Hai-1 followed June's instructions, navigating labyrinthine corridors filled with humming machinery and glowing panels. As they neared the core reactor, tension mounted. Every step brought them closer to their goal and closer to potential disaster. Suddenly, an alarm blared, echoing through the halls. "They've detected us." June warned over the comms. "You need to hurry." Jinho quickened his pace, clutching his device tightly. When they finally reached the reactor chamber, they found it guarded by several Vorthree soldiers. Thinking quickly, Hai-1 activated her camera, shining its bright light directly into the alien's eyes. Distracted, the soldiers hesitated just long enough for Jinho to slip past them and connect his device to the reactor's main console. "Initiating overload sequence," Jinho muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. The device hummed loudly, vibrating as it channeled energy into the reactor. Lights flickered, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. "It's working," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. But time was running out. Reinforcements poured into the chamber, surrounding Jinho and Hai-1. Trapped, they prepared for the worst, until Tae-suk and his team burst in, guns blazing. "Get out of here," Tae-suk yelled, laying down cover fire as Jinho and Hai-1 made a break for the exit. Outside the mothership, the team regrouped, watching anxiously as the countdown reached its final seconds. Then, with a deafening roar, the mothership erupted in a blinding explosion. Flames engulfed the sky as debris rained down, scattering the Vorthree fleet. Cheers erupted among the resistance fighters below, their voices carrying triumph and defiance. Zyrak, enraged by the loss of his flagship, ordered a full-scale assault on Earth's remaining strongholds. But humanity was ready. Inspired by the destruction of the mothership, people rose up en masse, refusing to back down. Streets became battlegrounds, buildings transformed into fortresses, and every man, woman, and child fought with everything they had. For Jinho, Hai-1, and the others, the victory was bittersweet. They had dealt a crippling blow to the Vorthree, but the war was far from over. Exhausted yet unyielding, they vowed to keep fighting for themselves, for their families, and for future humanity. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the battered city, they stood together, battered but unbroken. They knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in months, they faced it with hope rather than fear. The destruction of the Vorthree mothership marked a turning point in the war. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity truly believed they could win. The explosion had scattered the alien fleet, leaving their forces disorganized and vulnerable. Resistance cells around the world seized the opportunity, launching coordinated attacks on remaining strongholds. Cities once gripped by fear now pulsed with fury, as ordinary citizens armed with makeshift weapons joined the fight. In Seoul, Jinho, Hai-1, Tae-suk, Jiun, and the rest of the team worked tirelessly to keep the momentum going. They knew the Vorthree wouldn't give up easily, and Zyrak, their leader, was likely plotting his next move. But for now, humanity had the upper hand, and they intended to use it wisely. Hai-1 continued documenting the war effort, her camera capturing moments of both devastation and defiance. Her footage showed the resilience of people who refused to surrender, even when faced with overwhelming odds. She interviewed survivors, fighters, and families torn apart by the conflict, ensuring their stories would not be forgotten. "This isn't just about winning," she told Jinho one evening. "It's about remembering who we are and what we're fighting for." Jinho nodded, though his mind was focused on improving his device. The prototype had proven effective against the Vorthree's technology, but he knew there was still room for improvement. Working late into the night, he experimented with new modifications, hoping to make the device more stable and powerful. Sleep became a distant memory as he poured all his energy into creating something that could turn the tide of the war. Meanwhile, Tae-suk led missions to reclaim territory from the Vorthree. Armed with stolen weapons and fueled by anger, his team struck quickly and decisively, targeting supply lines and communication hubs. Each victory brought them closer to freedom, but also came at a cost. Casualties mounted, and exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. Still, no one spoke of giving up. They were too close to achieving what once seemed impossible. One morning, word reached the team that Zyrak himself had landed in Seoul. The Vor-3 leader had grown desperate, abandoning his ship to oversee operations on the ground. His presence signaled a final push, an attempt to crush the resistance once and for all. For Jinho and his friends, this was both a challenge and an opportunity. If they could defeat Zyrak, they might end the war altogether. Tae-suk devised a plan to ambush Zyrak at his command center, located in the ruins of downtown Seoul. It was a heavily fortified area, guarded by elite soldiers and surrounded by force fields. Breaking in would require precision, teamwork, and a lot of courage. But the team was ready. They had come too far to back down now. Preparations began immediately. Ji-un hacked into the Vor-3 systems, gathering intelligence on Command Center's layout and identifying weak points in its defenses. She also set up decoy signals to distract the guard station outside. Jinho worked on calibrating his device, ensuring it was ready to disable the force fields protecting the building. HFY prepared her camera, determined to capture every moment of the mission. This was history in the making, and she wanted the world to see it. On the night of the operation, the air was thick with tension. The team gathered in silence, each member lost in their own thoughts. Jinho clutched his device tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. HFY adjusted the strap of her camera bag, her hands trembling slightly but her resolve unwavering. Tae-suk stood at the front, his expression grim but determined. "Let's finish this," he said simply, before leading the way. Reaching the command center required navigating through streets littered with debris and patrolled by Vor-3 soldiers. Sticking to the shadows, the team moved cautiously, avoiding detection until they reached the perimeter fence. Ji-un disabled the security cameras remotely, creating a small window of opportunity for the others to slip through. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Corridors lined with glowing panels led deeper into facility, where Zyrak awaited. The team split into two groups, one tasked with creating diversions, the other responsible for reaching Zyrak. Jinho, HFY, and Tae-suk formed the latter group, moving quickly and quietly toward their objective. Things went smoothly at first. The decoys worked perfectly, drawing most of the guards away from Zyrak's chamber. But as they neared their destination, disaster struck. An alarm blared suddenly, piercing the silence. Somewhere along the way, they had triggered a sensor. "Move faster," Tae-suk hissed, urging the others forward. Guards appeared around the corner, their weapons raised. Tae-suk fired back, providing cover as Jinho and HFY sprinted ahead. Reaching Zyrak's chamber, they found him standing alone, his glowing eyes fixed on them with cold disdain. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered, his voice mechanical and devoid of emotion. "You are nothing but insects beneath my feet." Thinking quickly, Jinho activated his device, sending out a burst of amplified energy. The force field surrounding Zyrak flickered and collapsed, leaving him exposed. Without hesitation, Tae-suk charged forward, engaging Zyrak in hand-to-hand combat. The alien leader was stronger than any human, but Tae-suk fought with everything he had, driven by rage and determination. As the battle raged, HFY filmed frantically, capturing every blow exchange between Tae-suk and Zyrak. Her hands shook, but she refused to stop. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for, the moment they turned fear into fury. Finally, with a roar of defiance, Tae-suk delivered a decisive strike, knocking Zyrak to the ground. The alien leader staggered, his body convulsing as the impact destabilized his internal systems. "This is not over," Zyrak gasped, his voice fading as his body dissolved into a cloud of ash. The room fell silent as the reality of what had just happened sank in. Zyrak was dead. The leader of the Vor-3, the source of humanity's suffering, was gone, exhausted but triumphant. The team regrouped, watching as the remaining Vor-3 forces began retreating from Earth. Word of Zyrak's defeat spread quickly, sparking celebrations across the globe. Cities erupted in cheers as people took to the streets, waving flags and singing songs of victory. For the first time in months, hope replaced fear. Humanity had won, not just a war, but their dignity and spirit. For Jinho, High One, and the others, the journey was far from over. Rebuilding would take years, maybe even decades. But they faced it with renewed purpose, knowing they had proven themselves capable of standing against overwhelming odds. United by shared pain and purpose, they vowed to rebuild not just their cities, but their spirits. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the battered city, they stood together, battered but unbroken. They knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in months, they faced it with hope rather than fear. And so, the day humanity turned fear into fury marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by submission, but by resilience, unity, and the unyielding will to survive.